Today on the Basketball Manitoba podcast, we have Debbie Yeboah. Debbie is a graduate of Sisler High School, where she was voted MBCA Player of the Year and won the Carl Ritt Award. She was recognized as the number 2 player in the province in her grade 11 year and the number 1 player in her grade 12 year. Additionally, she played for the Manitoba Provincial team for 5 years. After graduation, she was recruited to play at the University of Victoria. During her time there, she was recognized as Canada West All-Star 3 times, landing on the first team once and the second team 2 times. She finished her career in the top 10 in 12 all-time statistical categories for the University of Victoria. She was an academic All-Canadian 4 times, and in her final year with the Vikes, she was awarded the prestigious President's Cup. She finished her playing career in Germany, where she was recognized as Guard of the Year, First Team All-Star, All-Import Team, and led the league in scoring. After her playing career was over, she stayed with the game, coaching with Athletes in Action for 9 years. Her journey has now come full circle as she's the current assistant coach with the Sisler Spartans, a position she's held for 3 years. So Debbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
So when you came on and, we were kind of going back and forth before we went online, you were just saying, I'm so grateful. I'm happy you guys chose me and all that stuff. And obviously, like, I knew you as a player. Like I was around, like, basketball. If you follow the game in Manitoba, people knew who you were. High school, knew you went to play Victoria. You had a great career. But when I was doing your bio and I'm putting it all together, I was like, oh, wow. No, you had a really good career. And you were saying, like, how grateful you were. I'm like, no, like, you definitely deserve to be here. But I know sometimes that's kind of weird.
It is weird. And well, I was just looking at the other people that you interviewed and, like, yeah, I feel really grateful to be here. But I appreciate you saying that. So thank you. That's very nice.
Well, I mean, it's just interesting though, because, you're obviously modest. The fact that you would even, you'd be like, oh, I'm grateful because, like, you deserve to be on this. And so I'm grateful to kind of have this conversation with you. I kind of finished off your intro and I mentioned that you're now coaching with Sisler, and I kind of wanted to ask how that's going so far this year, obviously compared to last year. We had this, this surge right before the season was kind of supposed to start up again. And I mean, you must have been concerned that the season might get shut down. The players, the coaches, obviously everyone's excited to keep going. So, like, how can you compare last year to this year and how that's kind of affected you and the players?
Yeah. So even it was 2 years ago, I guess. Okay, now the years are all strange. And that year ended early because COVID started. I guess this year I've been more optimistic. Like, even when things got really crazy around December and we had to shut down and stop practicing for a little bit, it didn't seem like the season was just going to end early like it did a couple years ago. And so I guess this year has been more optimistic in that sense. And I feel like it's going to keep going. We're playing less games, but we still have a season. But yeah, I mean, coaching it's a lot of fun. So I'm really just hoping that, COVID doesn't get worse and that we get to keep playing. It's really cool to get to see the girls, growing and learning. And it's fun because in high school, like, I did a lot of coaching with kids, and kids, it's so awesome. I love coaching kids, but when you're coaching people who are older, but who still have a lot to learn about the game, there's so many drills and so many things that you can do with them, and you get to start to see the impact right away. So that's been fun. I'm assistant coaching, so I'm not there as consistently as the head coach, but yeah, I mean, so far it's been great. I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
Do you think you'll keep going down the path and keep coaching? Do you like? Yeah. I know you spent lots of time with Athletes in Action. You've done coaching before, but like you said, do you think in this manner with, like, high school, like that competitive coaching, is that something that you enjoy and you want to kind of keep growing, or is it just something you do to kind of pass the time?
It's something that I really enjoy, and I definitely want to keep doing. Also, it's my school, right? It's Sisler. I'm still a Spartan. I still have a lot of pride with Sisler, even though it's been years and years since I've been there. Mike Tan, who's the head coach, it was the coach who coached me in grade 9 and 10 in grade 9, 11 and 12. So it's also fun to get to be working with him. There's also other people who played at Sisler who are back. So like Carrie, Razel, Kiana sometimes comes as well. So like that's, I mean, even looking at the assistant coaches, you can see that you playing basketball at Sisler has had a big impact on us. And so to get to be part of that and to get to start to have an impact on the next generation of basketball players that are coming out of the province is important to me, right? There's people who gave up their time and energy to help me become a better player. And there's things that I learned about the game, but also things that I learned about just, like being a good citizen, being a member of a team, working towards a goal with different people, a common goal with a group of different people. That was just super impactful in my life. And I think that's part of the journey is to give back when you've gotten so much. Absolutely. No, I totally know what you mean. It's, and it feels good to do so. Like, you're just like, this is what I should be doing. Right. Yeah. And I think it's interesting. And you mentioned like Mike Tan, he's been there for, like, it's crazy to think that he's coached you, because like he's really put in some time there. He's been around for a long time now. But it's interesting, that those people take their time to give, and then to you, and then now to put yourself in that position, it just totally makes sense, right? Like you understand that pathway, and you understand what the kids need because you were that kid. So it's totally makes sense. So I want to kind of start there. So I want to go back, and we talked about mentoring. We talked about Mike Tan coaching you. So I did some additional research for this podcast outside of the generic stuff, because I think this. Listeners that don't know who Kevin Yeboah is. Kevin's your brother, one of your siblings, and we're about the same age. Okay, yeah. So and Kevin, when he was in high school, his team and my team were rivals, and we played in the Final Four of provincials, and my team lost, and he sent us home. But yeah, it hurt. It really hurt. It still hurt even after all these years. But anyways, I asked him, you got to tell me something about your sister, something that no one else would know, in the basketball community. So again, it's nothing embarrassing. Don't worry. Okay. But what he did, he would embarrass me. He's the type to do it. So, but what he told me was that when you were young, you played basketball with another Manitoba basketball player who's currently playing professionally, and he told me that without question, when you guys played on the same team, that you were better than him. Is that true? And who is the basketball player that he was talking about? Is he talking about Jared? I don't know. You tell me. Yeah. Yes, he is. And he said, that's what Kevin said. Without question, I was better than Jared. Kevin said that when both of you played to get co-ed basketball together, that you were by far the better player. Is that true? I mean, listen, so this is what I'll say. We played together on the Maples Community Center team when he was 8 years old and I was 9 years old. That was my first basketball team that I played on, by the way, when I was 9 for the Winnipeg Minor Basketball Association, Maples. I'll never forget. I was number 33. Our jerseys were black on one side and orange on the other side. And I loved it because it was like Halloween colors. I'm like, yeah, we're Maples. You should be scared of us, this and that. Was I better than Jared? I mean, I don't know. That's what I'll say. Well, when I interview Jared, I will ask him the same question. I'm like, listen, do you remember this? Because that's what's going around right now. So you said that was your yeah, exactly. So that was your first time playing on a team? Yes. Yeah, that was my first time playing on a team. Yeah. Co-ed. We were 8 and 9 years old. I think there was 9 players on the team, 7 boys and only 2 girls. But yeah, I think it was good to get to mix it up with boys that young and, kind of already start to hold your own. And that's probably the beginning. I mean, I was never afraid of getting on the floor with boys. And that could be part of the reason why. I mean, another part of the reason why is probably because Kevin is my older brother. I was going to ask you, and and Stephen Tacky is my older cousin as well. Yeah. And so, those are, I mean, you might be asking this later, but those are 2 of my pretty big influences when it comes to my basketball, I guess, career. But yeah. So did they start playing? Like, was it because Kevin was playing? You're like, I want to play? Or was he like, hey, Debbie, here's a ball. Like, we're playing. I guess maybe both of those things.
Yeah.
Basketball's kind of always been in my life. Because of Kevin, because of Steven. I mean, Bernard Cancam, who also coaches and I think coached provincial team a couple years ago. He's my older cousin as well. A bunch of my other older cousins played. It's kind of just always been around. And I don't even really remember a time where I didn't like basketball and then decided I was going to like it. It's kind of just always been a thing for me.
What's the age difference between you and Kevin?
Almost 8 years. So 7 years and 10 months.
Okay. So that makes perfect sense how you like, that's like a perfect gap for you to be like a younger sister, because he's probably playing already. And then that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, so like, as you got older now, we're jumping way ahead here, but I have so many questions knowing Kevin, like when you started getting like, you're an adult now, like you're good enough to like play, like it's one thing when you're a kid and he's older. Okay, fine. But did he like challenge you? Did he talk smack? Like, were you guys having shooting contests or competitive against each other or any of your other siblings? Again, like, I don't know, like, what was that like? Because I mean, there must have had to have been some of that, like, I want to beat this guy at something when you were young and growing up.
Yeah. I mean, he is a lot older than me. But there were definitely times where we played. He never took it easy on me either. So like, yeah, there'd be times. I mean, sometimes we'd go to the Y and we'd like run drills. So he'd like, or he'd give me different things I can do in the basement. So I used to dribble a lot in our basement, and he'd be like, okay, you could doing figure eights or do this many behind the backs or whatever it is like that. But every now and then we would play, and like he would just destroy me. Which, maybe kept me humble. So maybe I owe him a thank you. But what I will say about playing one-on-one with Kevin is that the last time we played, I beat him, and we have never played again since. It was years and years ago now when he was living in Toronto. This was while I was in Germany. So maybe like 2014. He definitely had a hurt ankle. But we went and like just played on an outdoor court in Toronto. I was there visiting him, and I won. And I bet if you asked him, he would contest it. But that's the truth. The last time Debbie Yeboah played basketball against Kevin Yeboah, Debbie Yeboah was victorious.
That's all that matters. The injuries don't count. If he stepped on the court, that's his fault. You know what I mean? He should have just waited or whatever, man. That's just the way it goes. So like, again, like you said, Steven introduced you, like, obviously, Kevin was a super huge influence. Now, were there other people like early on? You must have had some coaches. I mean, you started out playing community club. After that, I'm sure you played more community club. I don't know if you got into the club system at all. Like, who were some of those early mentors, coaches, or even other players that you looked up to?
Yeah. So I did get into playing community club. I played for a team called the Winnipeg Selects when I was 11 years old. So this was early club teams when they're like, really, I think that was the only one around that time. And I guess one of my early coaches and one that I owe a lot to is a man named Brad Nance. He was the coach of I think it was the 12-year-old girls Winnipeg Selects team. And he saw me playing at it was a 3-on-3 tournament that was happening at the University of Winnipeg that I was just playing on with a couple of girls that I had from my Winnipeg Minor Basketball Association team. And Brad saw me playing. I played against his daughter in that 3-on-3 tournament. He saw me playing, and then he talked to me after and said, I'm coaching this team. I think you should come try out. It's a 12-year-old, it's a team for 12-year-old girls. I know you're 11, but I still think you should come and try out. So I went, I tried out, and I played for the Winnipeg Selects. And I think that was a team that, we traveled, we did tournaments in the States and things like that. And that was the first time that I was on a team that, that you had to try out for, that they made cuts for, that we got to take trips with. I think where basketball started really being serious for me. And it's because Brad saw me in a gym and asked me to try out. He also drove me to practices a lot. And Amy Ogadan played on that team too, actually, when she was 12. So I know her from back in the day as well. And then that team stayed together. We became the Manitoba Blaze. We played together for a long a long time. But it was through that I got introduced to provincial team and things like that. And I think that's, kind of what really, really started my career off in a competitive, serious kind of manner. And Kevin actually assistant coached with the Winnipeg Selects or the Manitoba Blaze when I was younger as well. So he was still around, picking on me in practices and stuff.
I'm sure he was talking smack. So you had some of these. So, I mean, like if we kind of just fast forward, you're coaching now, you've done athletes in action. And again, you only went up to your club coaches. I know you had provincial team coaches, you've had university coaches, high school coaches. You mentioned Mike Tan. Are there some messages or philosophies or things that stuck with you? And it could just be like a compilation of all of it. But, I want to jump forward just a bit and say like things that stuck with you that you still try to pass on. It could be a single message. It could be just a mentality. It could be anything. I don't know. There's always things that stay in your head from coaches. Right. And then you kind of if they're really good, they make it all the way through and then you pass them on. So are there any things that come to mind?
Geez. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things. And so I'm going to try, I'll say a few. The first year I played on the provincial team, Tanya McKay was the coach. And I remember we were doing this drill. That the way the provincial team worked then is that they picked 40 girls and made 4 different teams of 10. And then they picked 12 girls from those 40 to go to nationals. So this was at the beginning when I was on one of these teams of 10. And we did this drill where I think it was some sort of one-on-one drill. And if you were on offense and you scored, you stayed. And if you didn't, anyways, I did well in the drill. And I remember I was, I guess, being a jerk about it. I was celebrating in a way that, and I was a kid, right? I was younger than a lot of the kids there. But I was not being a respectful teammate. And I don't even know if she remembers saying this to me, but she said, you want to be the kind of person that people respect, not only as a player, but as a person. And yeah, I don't know. It maybe in the moment it didn't, I don't know. I think in the moment it impacted me, but it's also something that I thought about a lot growing up. And I think it impacted the way, I mean, I'm still very competitive, but I try not to be a jerk. I try to be the kind of player that, that people also respect as a person off of the court. So that's something that stuck with me. Another thing from when I was playing provincial team is something that Coach Mark said to me, or not to me, but to the team. We were just having a really rough practice. We were doing a really hard drill. I don't even remember what the drill was, but he said, tears in the dojo lead to victory on the battlefield. And that's just something that I think about a lot too, right? You work really hard on practice so that you can be victorious when you get to game time. And I think that's something that's important for anything, right? Not just for basketball. And sometimes you're going to be doing things that you don't want to be doing, but tears in the dojo lead to victory in the battlefield.
I like that one.
Yeah. That's one that stuck with me. I feel like there was a third one but it's escaped me. So if it comes back to me,
if it comes back, just say, I remember, and just shoot it out.
And those are just a couple phrases. I mean, there's just tons of things I've learned about work ethic, about my abilities, even just, being pushed past your limits and just realizing that you can really do more than you think you can do. Right? That's a huge lesson that I've learned from basketball, right? When you think you're out, I mean, you're not, right? And that's a pretty amazing thing to learn about yourself, and a thing that I've been able to apply in other areas of my life. Not even when it just comes to being physically fatigued, but when it comes to being mentally fatigued or stressed, or just knowing that your limits are not what you think that they are, and you can do more than you think you can do. Is a huge, huge lesson. I remember the third one, so I'm going to say it. The last one is from my coach, Jamie, and I'm forgetting her last name now, but she also coached me provincial team. She actually taught us a lot about teamwork and working together and just, being there for your teammates. But she also was very, very strict about respecting the facility that you play in. Oh. So there was one game where we just left a bunch of water bottles like there and, spills and all of this stuff. And she got so mad at us. And she gave us a lecture basically about how it's a privilege to be able to play in the gyms that we play in. You should leave a gym in a better condition than the condition you found it in. It's very important to respect the facility that you play in. And that's something that I really took to heart. And if you ask any kids who have been to Athletes in Action camps with me, they know that I'm really strict about that too. So when people leave garbage laying around, there's definitely consequences. So if you talk to any kids I've coached at AIA, they'll tell you that Debbie made them do push-ups.
Oh wow, you were giving them like, hey, you do push-ups. It wasn't just like, hey, clean the gym. No.
Oh no,
clean the gym plus push-ups.
You do 5 push-ups for every piece of garbage I find, and then I leave the garbage there, and somebody has to pick it up. Absolutely.
Oh, I love it. So I always ask, I love that question because there's probably been so many messages you've received, and like some of it, it just becomes like you're around it so much that like it just becomes who you are. You don't even think about like something you can say. But then there's things like this where you actually were like able to say, oh, I remember this phrase, or I remember this specific thing. It's always an interesting question because the answers you get they vary so much from person to person. So it's interesting. So, okay. So, fast forward in your playing career, you went to community club, talked about some of the club teams you played on. As I mentioned in the intro, you had an amazing career at Sisler, right? All these accolades, all this great stuff. But again, and this is coming from your brother.
Okay. What did he say?
So Kevin, if you're listening, these are, okay, the question, some of these questions got through. He told me other stuff. I'm like, this isn't appropriate for the podcast. This is like personal stuff, nothing inappropriate, but I'm like, has nothing to do with basketball. I don't know why I would talk about that, but not inappropriate in that regard, just not appropriate for the podcast.
Did he tell you when I colored on a Space Jam poster?
No.
Is that what this is about? I was a kid, Kevin.
I wish he did, because I would have brought that up. Were you mad at him, or was this just like you were like 5 years old?
I don't remember it. I was a literal baby.
Yeah. He's obviously forgiven you. He's forgiven you, I'm sure. Because otherwise he would have said, "Hey, ask her about this."
Yeah.
But as I was saying, so Sisler, great career. But like Kevin said, he said, ask her why she didn't go to Maples or Garden City, like her siblings. So why'd you choose Sisler? Why'd you end up there? and I will say this. Hold on, before you answer, okay. I will say, because again, if it was you had choice, catchment, whatever, I don't know what the reasons you're going to tell us. But Kevin, you're listening. You transferred in the middle of your high school career to Calvin. Okay, so. Anyways, I had to just say that ahead of time, because if you're saying it was, now you can feel free to tell us.
That's true. I forget about this often. Yeah, I went to Sisler because it's a good school, and that I was advised that Sisler would be the best place to go to give myself the most options when it came to basketball, like to become the best player.
Yep. That
would be the best school to go to out of the schools that were in the area, really is what it came down to. Also, Sisler was in Maclean's magazine as one of the best schools in Canada around that time too. And so, it just really seemed like the best option. They have a really good sports program there. It's a really good school, and a better sports program than Maples and GC had at that time. And so, that's why I went. It wasn't. No knocks to Maples or GC. I just knew that Sisler was good.
Yeah, no, again, and I think I mean that's always been. Again, I don't know how it was way back when. I know in my time and up until recently, they actually put rules in for transferring and like choosing schools and stuff like that, and when you have to go in. But I think it's important, right? I mean, there's going to be different reasons why people pick different schools. Like some schools have great productions, right? When it comes to like, whether it be acting and music and stuff like that. And I think people should be able to make those choices, because we're sitting here, and I would bet that you would tell me like, hey, basketball has been integral in my not only success, but just like your enjoyment as a human being, right? Like the things that you've experienced. And so like being able to make those choices, like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Now, I'm guessing that you went early on anyways, right? Because Sisler probably starts in like 9th grade. So
yeah, it starts in 9th grade. I went straight from 9th grade. So I didn't transfer from any of those schools.
Exactly.
I just, out of middle school, that's where I went.
Exactly. And that's why I was doing a little shot at your brother, Calvin, because you know what, he's transferring, but he could, exactly. That's probably why he wanted me to ask it. I don't know why. He's like, ask her why she chose that. Just go ahead, ask her. I was like, all right, cool. Like, I don't know if there was some other, I had to ask because I'm like, I don't know, there might be some other crazy reason why, like, but
yeah, no. And I mean, and like, I don't even remember too many of the conversations around that, but maybe Kevin, like maybe he actually talked to me a lot about, hey, this is the place you want to go to a school where you can get the best opportunities.
This is why I switched. Did.
And so this is why you should go to Sisler. And then I went.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. Like, I'm sure, because he was, there. He's not going to give you bad information. He's probably going to help you. Wants you to succeed as well. Right. So,
yeah.
So, okay. So this is a perfect transition to the question. So we're not going to go through your entire Sisler career or anything like that. But, we fast forward and you went to Victoria, and, as again, in the intro, you are one of the all-time great players to play at the University of Victoria. So the question is, Winnipeg, born and raised, why'd you choose Victoria? You had probably lots of schools recruiting you. You could have stayed home, I'm sure. Yeah. Why'd you go to Victoria?
I thought a lot about staying home. Why did I go to Victoria? Really, the main reason I went to Victoria is somebody, it came to a point where I was deciding between going to the University of Winnipeg and going to Victoria. I talked to a bunch of different people. I realized that it is easier to come home if you leave and don't like it, but it's harder to go if you stay and don't like it. But really, a teacher at Sisler was talking to me about it. And I was like, yeah, I'm struggling between this decision and this decision. And he said, you know what, just go with your gut. And my gut told me to go to the University of Victoria. So that's where I went. Also, I don't know if you guys have been to Victoria. It is like really, really gorgeous.
Yes.
So I went out there on a recruiting trip and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a city I can live in. Yeah, it was really great. And the coach there at the time, Brian Chang, we did an individual workout together, and he is just so technically sound. Like he made a few just minor changes to my shot, to the quickness of my steps when I get into my shot, to help me be a bit more balanced when I'm coming off of screens or when I'm coming off of cuts and making a catch. And it was just like a simple thing, but it made an immediate and huge difference. And I was like, I think this guy knows. He knows what he's talking about. I think he can help me be good. He can help me be better at this. So yeah, I went with my gut. I trusted Brian. I went on a recruiting trip and saw how gorgeous Victoria was. And I figured if I really didn't like it, home is always home, and I can always come back.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember when you decided and like telling your family and all that, like you said, okay, I'm going, and then do you remember that moment?
I don't remember that moment specifically. Yeah, I guess it would have been a big deal, but
it's funny you don't remember. You're like, oh, okay.
How did I tell my parents? Yeah,
I guess the question is, when did you know? I guess, like, was it after you went on the visit, you did a workout, you're like, oh, I'm going here, or do you have to go home first and be like, okay, I have to think about this?
No, yeah, I went home first. I went on a couple of recruiting trips after my trip to Victoria as well. Yeah, talked to a lot of different people, asked a lot of questions. Maybe it wasn't, maybe I don't remember a specific moment, because I think that I was talking to people a lot about these decisions as I was making them. Right. So, I mean, by the time I knew, people probably realized as well, that this is, this is where I'm leaning. This is where I'm leaning. Okay, I'm going to commit. But I don't, there was no, okay, everybody gather around. It's time for the decision. There was
no decision.
There was nothing like that.
But so then what other schools, obviously you mentioned that you would have, had you not gone to Victoria, potentially gone to Winnipeg, but what other schools were recruiting you? Do you remember? And what other visits did you go on?
Yeah, I went. So my first visit was actually to Royal Military College, RMC, in Ontario. And even though I was pretty sure I wasn't going to go there, I think it did help me realize that maybe I wanted to go away for school. So it was cool, like seeing, like the hall where they get their meals and like learning about what their day-to-day is like, seeing the restrooms and things like that. I was like, oh, it might be all right to be away. But I went on the recruiting trip because my brother actually told me, like, listen, there's not too many times in your life where you get recruited. This might be the only time. So take advantage of it, enjoy it. So I went there. I also, I did a recruiting trip at Vic. I did a recruiting trip to the University of Regina. I was recruited by U of M and U of W and Brandon University. I spoke to a coach at Fraser Valley and then a couple other coaches at some colleges.
So what was it like coming home to play games? Like when you come back to play at Manitoba, at Winnipeg, those must have been special games.
Yeah. What was it like?
How did you feel? Like, obviously you're coming home, family's there, but like you're fired up for those games, obviously.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was hype. Coming home I loved it. So my first year at UVic, I actually didn't get to come back to Winnipeg, but we had games in Brandon. And a bunch of my extended family drove out to Brandon. And just my family here is big. There's a lot of us, and we're a group of loud people. Like you'll notice us when we're around. So the games were always exciting because there was lots of people there making a lot of noise. And coming home, yeah, I mean, it always made me feel really loved, and supported because my family was there. So they came out to Brandon. And then every year after that, we played in Winnipeg, either against the University of Winnipeg or the University of Manitoba. And same thing. They came out to all the games. I mean, I didn't particularly feel like I had something to prove when I played against Winnipeg, but I mean, it's a basketball game. So I want to win. I want to show that I'm better at basketball than the people I'm playing against. So I mean, the games were, yeah. And because I would know some of the girls,
I was going to say
the games are a little bit, I guess they're a little bit more intense that way. Is that like, I remember you from, like I know you, and then, we're playing again. So I guess there's a little bit more of something to prove, but what I remember most about coming home is just it's just my family coming out and coming out to watch the games and making a lot of noise. Also, my parents would also have the team over for lunch.
Nice.
So my teammates would get to meet my parents. Sometimes one of my aunties would be over. They'd get to try some Ghanaian food. So they'd have some, jollof rice and maybe some plantains and some chicken, some kebabs. But they'd get to see kind of they get to learn a little bit more about me, and they'd get to see a bit of where I'm from. So that was always exciting to get to share that with my team.
Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. I mean, because like there's, we've had good players come out of Manitoba, and some of them, like yourself, don't stay. They go elsewhere and they come back. And I mean, I've been just on the men's side. Like I remember guys having like, they're not revenge games because it's not like they played there, but they feel like it's a big thing when you come back and like you're playing the home team. Because the other thing is when you were young, like I'm sure you knew about the Westmen, you're watching games. Like you said, players in the team. Tanya coached you.
Yeah.
So there's, like you've played in that gym how many times as a youth, right? So it's like you're playing. It's kind of a home game, but yeah, it just must have been a weird dynamic all around though. Just
But it did feel kind of like a home game. Yeah, right. Like I'm supported here, right? Like I get that this isn't my gym, but like a little bit, it's my gym.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to ask you, like, I'm doing your bio, doing the research. President's Cup. Mm-hmm. Is that what is it? Fancy word for athlete of the year, or is it something more than that?
It's awarded to the student athlete who best combines athletic achievement with academic excellence, I think is the wording that they use. And I mean, I loved playing at UVic. That award I won. I was co-awarded it. Somebody else, a rugby player, also was given it at that time as well. But it's the last award that they gave out. They gave out at the banquet. So it was my last banquet, the last award. And so it was really special. I mean, school was also really important to me. And so to be recognized for those things and at the banquet in my last year was special.
No kidding. Yeah. I figured it was something like that. It's an interesting award. I don't know that all schools have that award where it combines, I've never heard of it specifically, obviously not the President's Cup, but their own version of it, where it combines someone who's exceeding in both academics and athletics. So they honor people who are academic All-Canadians typically, or they'll honor someone who is an athlete. But it's an interesting award and obviously something to be super proud of. Because I know we talked just very briefly in your introduction. I'm sorry we didn't talk about, but I kind of highlighted that you were an academic All-Canadian. I think was it 4 out of the 5 years? Yeah,
every year but my first. That first year will shock you.
yeah. Was it that bad?
No, it was actually fine. And speaking of phrases that like you remember, when I was in my second year of university, one of my French teachers said the amount of work, the extra work that you have to put in to go from getting B's to getting A's is like not that much work. Like you do have to put in more work, but it's not like that much work to go from getting B's to getting A's. And I was like, And so I put in a little bit more work. Like she said it like in passing, and it changed my life.
Shoot,
Wait, okay.
Yeah.
I could put in a little bit. I could put in more work. No, my first year wasn't bad, but my years after that were better.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah. Except for calculus, that was a struggle in my first year. Yeah,
no,
and then I quit
your first year.
So it didn't get better.
Math is not math's not your thing.
It was in grade 12. Yeah, in grade 12. I like all through elementary school, middle school, high school. I was really, really good at math.
What happened?
Well, just the difference between calculus and pre-calculus, I think. It's like where it stopped being fun for me. I kind of feel like math in general is just, it stops being fun for people at different levels. Like some people like in grade 1 and grade 2, they hate it. Some people like in grade 7, grade 8, they hate it. Some people start hating it in grade 10. And for me, it was first year university. And then math just weeds people out until there's like 4 people who are doing their PhD in it. So
makes sense. Well, so just on the topic of education, I remember reading, you did go back. Was it, you went to McGill, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so was that a master's?
No, I went to law school.
That was your, okay. So what was, you got a BA in,
yes.
And what was that?
In philosophy and a minor in French.
Okay. So and then you went to law school at McGill.
Yeah. So I played at UVic, graduated with a major in philosophy, a minor in French, played a couple years overseas, and then went back to school at McGill University in 2016. And went to law school there, finished my schooling in December 2019. And now I'm working as a lawyer.
That's awesome. So why law? What brought you to that? Like you had, your philosophy, French, played some pro, which we're going to talk about a little bit, but I have to ask, what's up with the law? What attracts you to that?
I think I was always interested in law. Like when I was a kid, it was for the regular like kid reasons. Like I like arguing, so I want to be a lawyer. But I didn't really think about it too much. I went to university, I didn't really know I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I ended up really liking philosophy. And so started taking more and more philosophy classes. I was like, great, this is what I'll major in. The thing with philosophy, though, is that when you're taking philosophy, people will often say, oh, that's so great. So what do you plan to do with that? Very fair question, but one that was difficult for me to answer. And so I started saying, I think I'm going to go to law school. It was something I was thinking about, and I started saying it because it was an answer where people like stopped asking me follow-up questions about my future. And so I was like, I think I'm going to go to law school. And then as I was getting my degree, I realized that my grades were like good enough that if I want to go to law school, this is something that I really can do. And then in my second year, when I was overseas in Germany, I was like, you know what, I'm going to write the LSAT, the law school application test. We'll see how it goes. And if it goes well, then I'll apply to some law schools. So the LSAT went well. So I was like, great, I'll apply to some law schools. And we'll see what happens. And then I got into some law schools. So it was kind of like always a thing I wanted to do in the background, but just became a real thing that I could do based on my situation. And so I put in some work and I made it happen.
Nice. So you mentioned kind of you're playing overseas. Kind of want to talk about how you actually got over there, because a lot of people have questions. It's like, okay, at the highest levels, like the highest levels, it's like, oh, you get drafted and like people understand that. But when it comes to playing anywhere else, it's like, how do I even get there if I wanted to? So what was your journey like from like finishing at Victoria to now going to play in Germany? Like agent, why? Like, do you have an agent? Did you seek out an agent? Did someone come up to you? Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah. I will say that I was lucky. But yeah, basically what happened to me, I knew that I wanted to keep playing after university. I was in my fifth year at the University of Victoria, and there's a woman who coaches in Germany, in Würzburg. Her name is Janet Fowler. She used to play for the University of Victoria maybe like 25 years before I played. And she graduated, went on, played basketball in Germany, fell in love, got married, had kids, started coaching. And so then whenever she was looking for players to come out and play for her team, she would first go to BC schools. And so she reached out to my coach and said, hey, we're looking for a scoring point guard who is vocal and who could be a leader. And our coach was like, hey, I think I have somebody. So I put together like a basketball resume, which is essentially a resume of your basketball. So like your stats, what kind of awards you've won, and this and that, and then put together some game tape. I sent that out to Janet, and she said, yeah, you should come play for us. Here's a contract. So she sent me a contract. And then I went out and played. Yeah. But I had made plans to start talking to an agent that Tanya McKay actually put me in contact with, but ended up being signed without her. So I was lucky that way. But one thing I will say, one of my favorite quotes is, I think it's often attributed to Thomas Jefferson, but I'm not sure he's actually the guy who said it, but I'm a big believer in good luck. And I believe that the harder you work, the more you have of it. And I think that in a lot of ways, I know that in a lot of ways, I've been really lucky. Like a lot of people have been really kind. People have just seen me, like Brad, my coach who before Winnipeg Selects, he just saw me playing, and it changed my life. This team in Germany needed somebody who was just like me at the time that I was graduating, right? That's lucky. But yeah, I find that, when you put in the work, then you set yourself up to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that kind of present themselves to you. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer in luck, but I believe that the harder you work, the more you have of it.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah. You have to be ready to receive those opportunities, right?
Yeah.
The only way to do that is working hard and being ready to receive them. So you're there for 2 years. And so the question is like, you're applying to law schools, you did the LSAT, you're applying to law schools. If you didn't get into those schools, would you continue to play?
Oh, good question. Oh, geez. Maybe not. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think maybe not. I don't know exactly what I would have done. Deciding to leave basketball is a strange thing. I often think about it as, I feel like basketball was my first love, and like leaving, like retiring from basketball was like a breakup.
Yeah.
It was like a heartbreak in many ways. But I think that when I stopped playing after my second year, I'd come to a point where I think that I had gone as far in the sport, maybe not that I could, but maybe that I was willing to put in the work to go, which is difficult to say now. And it's something I think about a lot still. Like, I don't know, should I have done more? Could I have done more? I mean, the answer always seems to be, yeah, of course, but should I have? I don't know, maybe if I didn't get into law school, I would have got back into a gym and gone back to the sport. But I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I would have gone back to school and become a teacher, or I don't know, picked up a career doing something else. Like who knows? But I didn't only stop playing basketball because I had gone into law school. I stopped because I think I'd just come to a point where, I was trying to figure out how to make decisions about my future and what would be best for me. And, playing overseas, as fun as it is, it's maybe not the most sustainable career. It is year to year. And the longer that you stay away, I think the harder it is to reintegrate yourself back, into life as a normal, non-competitive athlete person.
Just a normal citizen.
Yes, exactly. And so I think I was just, trying to make the best decisions for myself in that respect. Also, when I went to Germany, I told my mom I was only going for a year, and she already wasn't super happy that I was going to be super far away for that long. And then I went back for a second year. And so it's too bad for her, because when I came back home, I ended up leaving again for law school. But I think that it for a number of reasons, it just it was time for me to hang up the shoes, so to speak, and move on to the next stage.
So, I'm watching you say that, and I'm seeing this body language coming from you that there's a lot of contemplation going on right now. And I just have to bring this up because this is not anyone who was any athlete, but I'll just speak for basketball players, obviously. And you're so invested in the sport, and it must be hard because a lot of people don't get the opportunity to make the decision. Like, it's just like, you don't get to play anywhere anymore. And you had to kind of sit down and say like, okay, like I actually have to make the best decision for what's going to be like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Yeah. And so, it seems like, obviously at that point, you still like loved basketball. Like you had mentioned, kind of like almost like a breakup. But oddly enough, in most cases, people are on the other end of it. Someone's breaking up with them. It seems like you broke up with basketball. Because you know what I'm saying? Like when you don't get to make the decision, like you just don't get to play anymore. You're like, oh, like I kind of feel a loss. Where you're like, you were the one who had to make the decision, and there's a certain the body language I was reading, like you're kind of like doing a lot of like, oh man, like I don't, like I know it was the right thing, but like, did I really want to do it? I still kind of feel this way about it. It was like you seem very conflicted.
Yeah. It was tough. And one thing I'll say too is that I was playing in the second division in Germany, and like what I wanted to do is I talked to a couple of agents, and I was hoping that I can move up. And that really wasn't coming together. And that's something that I'll say too, is that it's hard overseas. You're trying to communicate with people where you don't always speak the language. Sometimes things fall through. There's just not a position for you. Like, right. Sometimes they only have a couple foreign spots, and they want to give it to a bigs because, they can find somebody else who's 5'6", who's maybe not as good, but they just will not be able to find somebody else who's 6'2". So, they want to, there's these things like that. And there's tons of really great players who didn't have the opportunity to go overseas. But I think for me, what it came down to was just like, if I wasn't going to be moving up, like, did I want to play again for the same team in the same division? And I loved it out in Germany. You still have friends out there. I went back and visited in 2019 before the world shut down. I loved it out there, but I was just thinking that, a third year here, like, is this, is it worth it to play another year here and wait another year before I can try again? Or should I move on to this next thing and put myself in a position to be a contributing member of society when I come back? And so I guess in a sense I did break up with basketball. It didn't break up with me, but in the same way, it's still tough because it's not even that I loved basketball. I love basketball. The sport really has my heart, and so it was hard to say goodbye as a player.
But I mean, I think that's when we started the conversation. We're talking about coaching. And that's why, in hearing, we heard what you just said now, and we rewound and said, okay, well, it makes sense. Like, you can make those connections. Like, okay, this is why it's so important for you now to sit here and be mentoring these young basketball players, right? Because you understand and you have a love for the game, like it's still there, and it makes it easy, and it makes it fun, and it makes it something that makes you feel good too, right? Because you still love the game. You see kids who love the game, and it's like there's this thing going on. I know exactly how you feel, so it's like you know, there's it's an awesome feeling.
It's so exciting. And sometimes you forget, like, I mean, I wasn't coaching because of COVID, right? So it'd been a while. And when I got back into the gym, right, and you have a ball in your hands and you're teaching something, and it's just like, oh my goodness, I forgot how much I love this. Like, this is so exciting, right? Like these, they're going to learn something. Like, oh man, somebody's cheating the screen. You could fade. Like, now that's something you know. Like, you didn't know that before, but now you know that. And people are going to have a harder time guarding you because of this. And that's so exciting, you know?
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. That's the one thing that I always enjoy too in coaching and teaching people stuff is, well, not only especially with basketball, these people, like people you're coaching typically are very keen to learn stuff, right? They're excited and they love being there. That's one part of it. The other part is exactly what you said. It's like the progression. Like you see them learn something and then they're happy and you see a certain like confidence that they develop from it. And then you're like, yeah, like, you know, you feel good for them. It's like, it's a real feeling. Like I actually get like physical feeling from like, it's like, yes, like you feel so good about it. So totally know how you feel. How you feel.
Absolutely.
So we have a couple more questions here. We're going to wrap up right away, but these ones are, I'm going to ask you one where you're going to have to dig into your memory banks and come up with a moment. And then the other ones are going to kind of just be some advice. So first question is your most memorable moments, like one or many, memorable basketball moments. They can be from anywhere, high school, college, pro, whatever, community club. Something that stands out. It can be more than one too.
Okay. My most memorable basketball moments. I think that for me, the moments that I remember the most are like, they're not necessarily the ones that you get awards for, but it's recognition. Like it's when you can see that people are like, oh, wow, there is nothing we can do about this girl on the court. So like, I remember I was grade 11 and we had a game against Glen Lawn, and I guess I had been scoring a lot, and I got the ball, and the coach for Glen Lawn he was yelling from the sideline. He said, I don't care what happens. Do not let Debbie score. Debbie does not score. And I don't know, I did something and I like hit a little jumper in the middle of the key, and he just like threw down his board. And I don't know. I like that moment where you knew that everybody's goal was for you specifically not to score, but you were still able to score. Like that for me is fun. Like I like in basketball, I love beating the odds. So that's why 3-on-2 continuous is one of my favorite drills, because I love when you're not supposed to get a stop, right? Yeah. They have more people than you, but you get one. Like that kind of thing. That kind of thing is fun. So that's just like a random time that probably like nobody else remembers. But that I'll remember forever.
It's interesting. I think I totally know what you're talking about though. Like, and because I'm remembering watching you play now, because like the more you're talking, obviously you say Glen Lawn, I know the coaches. I probably wasn't at this game, but I forgot for a second how you were when you played. So anyways, continue. It was coming back to me because I'm like having like actual video. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm very competitive.
Yes.
Yeah. I want the person guarding me to know that not just to know that I scored on them this time, but to leave believing that I will always forever be able to score on them anytime we ever play again. Like, it's like a little bit further than winning in this moment, like into, I want you to know that I can win in any moment ever kind of thing. Another big basketball moment for me, memory for me was when I was playing for UVic. I was in my second year. And we were playing against Simon Fraser. This is when they were still in the CIS. They ended up moving and playing in the NCAA after this year, actually, after my second year. But they had been on a 55 game winning streak.
No way.
Yeah, so they hadn't lost in a really, really long time. But they came, we had games against them at the University of Victoria, and we were in a close game the whole time. It was tied, I want to say it was tied at 61. I don't know exactly what the play we were supposed to run was, but the ball got into my hands, and there was a few seconds left. I still remember it was an in-out crossover to a jumper at the around the elbow, and I hit it, the game winner. They had like 2 seconds left and didn't score, but I hit the game winner against Simon Fraser to break a 55 game winning streak.
Wow.
Yeah, which was really, really exciting for me. And part of the reason I remember it so much is because our athletic director, Clint Hamilton, he was also a basketball player, so he's always loved the basketball teams. But I hadn't talked to him too much before then. But he saw me after the game and he gave me a hug. He was just so excited that UVic had got this victory. And Clint and I are still, he's great. He and I are still close and still talk. But it was exciting for me to get to be part of a moment that meant something, not just to our team that year, but to like the administration at UVic, and it was just really cool.
That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. That's funny. I actually got to work with Clint for him for the Olympic qualifying tournament in Victoria. So I got to meet him, and he mentioned you because he said, "Oh, I'm from Winnipeg," and then he did mention you. So
yes.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and I could see exactly how, because how excited I could see exactly that. I can envision it because he loves the game so much too.
He does. He loves the game. Yeah, he wasn't like a super emotional guy though. Like so was it like I didn't often see him excited. So it was really that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Okay, so and this could be something you said already in earlier on in the podcast, but what's the one thing that you learned through basketball that you apply to everyday life?
One thing.
Well, it can be many. It doesn't have to be one. It can be, it's.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I learned from basketball is just that. Yeah, your limits are not what you think that they are, and that you can do more than you think you can do. So shout out to every coach who has pushed me, who's pushed anyone really. I just when you have like one more man maker, one more suicide to run, when you dig deep. I don't know. You do it and it's hard. But then it's done and you did it. And it's just like, it's just such a impactful thing to learn about yourself that your limits aren't what you think that you are, and that you can do more than you think you can do. So that's probably that's one of the biggest things that I learned from basketball that I think that I apply to other areas of my life. But also there's just you learn a good work ethic, right? You learn how to work hard. You learn about delayed gratification. So you learn that, like the work that you put in, you don't get to immediately see results when you lift weights or when you put up whatever many 100 shots at the gym. But that you're working towards something and to get to learn that. I think in that you learn a lot of patience. What else did I learn? You learn how to work really well with people. And I think that's something that's huge for anyone who's played on any team. But you learn how to work with people from different backgrounds towards a common goal. You learn about your limitations, but also your strengths and how you can use them to be part of a team that ends up being, better than the sum of its parts. So that's something that I learned from basketball that I still use now. That I still come back to now. And one more thing, I don't know. You just learn that you can always improve. Like I guess I say you learn how to handle loss and you learn how to handle failure. And I think that that's something that's really big that I learned from sports as well. I'll just say this quickly. When I went to law school, after our midterm exams in my first year, it was really hard for some people because, you go to law school. A lot of people are there because they have been the best student in their, like they're always smartest, always getting A's, whatever. And then they come to law school and, a lot of people are smart. Also, these exams are really hard. And so there's just it's just like 100 and whatever students who are getting their first C pluses. Like the first time I walked back into school after we got our grades back, you could just see that the energy, like the mood, like people were hurt. People were really like dealing with their identity. Like, oh man, if I'm not getting straight A's, like who am I? Like there was some real distress. And I think for me, I was better able to handle that transition because I had that, coming out of high school and playing basketball at the University of Victoria, right? Because you come out of high school, you like, if you're playing basketball in university, you did well in high school, but you go to university, now you're with a bunch of girls who all were the best in their high schools, right? You go from scoring all the time to like maybe barely getting minutes. But, in that you learn that, okay, so right now this is where I'm at, but that doesn't need to be where I stay. Like I have the ability to get better at this. And that's what happened with basketball, right? You put in the work. You talk to people, what do I need to do? I need to have a quicker release of my jump shot. I need to understand how to make reads off of whatever. I need to know where to make my like I need to be faster. I need to be stronger, whatever it is. And you put in the work and then you're better. And so when I went to law school and, my first grades, the first grades I got back weren't bad, but they weren't great. And so I think I was just better able to handle that transition. Like, okay, this is going to be hard, but that's okay because things have been hard before. I've been able to overcome before. What do I need to do? I do those things and I'm going to be better at this. And I think that too is one of the bigger lessons that I've learned from the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you understand the process of things.
Yeah.
Much more, right? It's like there's a start and a finish. And that's it's interesting because like that's why I love sport. I love sport so much. Obviously basketball is, my sport, but it just really teaches you so much about the way people say that the microcosm of life, and it truly is. Like you said, like you can take a single season and that can be like, even that you can even use that as a corollary to like a year of school, right? And I started off tough, and you can look at a big picture, small. It's just, it really, really does teach you so much. And so these lessons are important. And like the stuff you're saying is gold because it's so true. So the last question I have here, and I think you may have answered this question with some of the stuff that you've shared already. But now if we get really specific here, and then we can almost imagine if you could give a message. We'll focus on the people in Manitoba specifically. But you can give a message to every young player. Those players. Think about when we were talking about you early on, community club, club team, high school, even you early in university, right? Playing provincial team, all that. You can give them a message. And this is someone who loves the game, someone like you, but you want to just teach them something. You've been through the journey and now you want to pass that on. It can only be one though. It can't be like 10 different things. You got to pick one that's the most important to you. And you want to pass that message on because you think it's going to be the most efficient message to help these young people. What would that message be? You take your time, think about it.
Yeah.
It's a hard question, I know, but
I think it's a good question and an important one. I think I already know. Yeah, I know what I had to say. If I could give one message to basketball players, to people, I guess. But yeah, to people who want to be successful at the sport, I would say, in order to do things well, first you need love and then technique. I can't take credit for that. That's a quote from Anthony Gaudi, who's an architect and was an architect in Spain. But I think that so much of being good at a sport, like, I mean, it's important to be smart. It's important to have technique. It's important to know what you need to do, right? Like, get your elbow under the ball when you shoot, be balanced. Protect the ball when you, like, whatever it is. Those things are important. But so much of what separates good players from great players, I think, is just passion. Just, they really love it. They just really, really care. And because their motivation comes from that caring, that love for the game, they will push themselves. They will learn the technique. They will do the extra thing. But I think it needs to be that first. To do things well, first you need love and then technique.
Interesting. I like that one. I like it. That's a great way to end it. It's been a great conversation.
It has.
It has. It really has. This has probably been one of my more how do I say this? Animated conversations, maybe.
Yeah, fair.
But you see, the thing is, you bring that out in people, right? So, like, that's the thing. Like, you bring energy. So it's like, okay, you're like laughing and talking a bunch. So this is super fun. I enjoyed myself a lot. Yeah.
We get to talk about basketball. I love this game. This is a good day.
I know.
You said a bunch of nice things about me too. So this is, I feel good.
I got to hear your resume read to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good times. Good times. But we'll end it there. Appreciate you. And thanks.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series. And reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.